What's up, y'all, and welcome to probably the best fitness and nutrition podcast ever. We know there's a ton of wellness information out there.
But we also know that by learning to optimize your nutrition, fitness, recovery, mindset, and relationships, that you'll feel more human than ever.
That's why we take fitness and nutrition seriously, but not ourselves.
So turn up your volume while learning, laughing, and crying with us. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rue Fitness to stay up to date on the best fitness advice, and at Stacked Coaching for all of the most important nutrition tips and tricks.
And now, the podcast that will change your life.
Probably.
Where's that more in my face?
So before we were recording, I almost died. I was eating my lunch. Jamie came out of her office and was like, "Are you alive?" Because it was a piece of red pepper went down the wrong pipe and I could not stop coughing.
Well, and then sometimes, and I heard you walk out, so I was afraid that sometimes when people are choking, they leave the area because they are afraid to create more chaos.
Yeah.
And then they die.
And then they die.
Do I need to do the Heimlich, or are you okay?
No, I was actually coughing and then I sneezed at the same time. I was like, oh my gosh, so much saliva. So I had to go take care of that. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
That's a great note to start on. So
Did
much
not have to do the
saliva.
Almost died.
Yes.
Lots of choking. Jamie almost saved me, and now she's on the podcast.
Yes.
It's been a day.
I will say, there was one time, and it got a little dicey, so I haven't brought it back up. There was one time where the question, our icebreaker question for class was, if you were stranded on a desert island and you had one coach to bring with you, who would it be? I don't remember who I picked. There was a running tally on a whiteboard, so feelings got hurt. But in hindsight, I would choose you.
I feel really touched by this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's tell the people why
I
that
know.
is,
I'd like to know.
I mean,
I can massage you, maybe.
Well, I mean, that is definitely a perk of that situation. But I just feel like you are kind of the go-to when I have questions about keeping my body and other people safe.
I love the touch
You would help me
that Jamie
take
brings
care.
too. She's always touching my shoulder and how are you feeling today? And she can always sense when something's wrong.
Yeah, and I'll ask Jamie, I'll be like, can you,
This is so nice.
Mardi Gras this past year, I was like, hey, I just need you to throw together a first aid kit, help. And then she came back with this is what we need. And I am calling the fire department to try and get a truck out and let's do X, Y, and Z. And anytime I ask for hey, can you just do this little thing? She goes 10 times farther than I've asked.
Aww.
And she makes us bracelets.
Yeah.
We're all wearing our bracelets
We're all wearing our bracelets.
Yeah.
What does your bracelet say, Sarah?
Sizzle stacked coach.
And what does yours say, Jamie?
Mommy.
Mine says mommy too. But Jamie made these for us.
And the only reason I know about Sizzle Stacked Coach is because I listen to the podcast.
Of course
I would
you
like
do.
you guys to know that.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we're getting ahead of ourselves like we do, but I want to welcome Jamie to the podcast. Do not adjust your computer screens. Bradley is not with us today.
This is wild.
It's just
It's just
a
the
lady
ladies.
show, bitch muscles. And so we talk a lot on this podcast about various things, but whenever I'm giving a new person a tour of our space, I always talk about how we think of our business in really 3 layers. We think of it as the fitness side, obviously, the nutrition side, obviously, which we talk about on the podcast a lot. And we've had Jamie on the podcast before. But the third piece to that business is really what Jamie brings as a resource, and that is recovery through various techniques, through massage and through cupping. But Jamie is a very talented and diverse lady. So we are recording this podcast to talk about the other things that she has to offer as well. So thanks for being on with us.
Thank you for having me. So yes, this is not going to be about massage. The other newer part of my business is working with pregnant women and postpartum women.
Yes.
So this came about, I'm sure you will remember because you were pregnant around the same time that I was with our first children, 2012. I had just started CrossFit a year before, and like most women, I fell deeply in love with it because finally it was a place where I belonged, where women were supposed to have muscles, they were supposed to be strong. And for someone with a naturally muscular body, it was not a very accepted or sought after aesthetic in the 90s or 2000s. And to finally find a place where not only was muscles celebrated, but I was one of the smaller ones. Like, I'm not the most muscular person here. And that's really bizarre when you're entering somewhere like for the first time after having tried to fit into like a runner's body or a yogi body, a ballet body. Like, I just wasn't ever going to achieve that aesthetic. And so to get somewhere where strength is expected and celebrated,
yeah.
you know? So like, I mean, I think that's why so many women love it at CrossFit, because you get to see what you can do with your body and you get to just be strong. And it's not so much about the way you look, but if you have muscles, it's also accepted and you don't have to try and change that. Yeah.
Wait, so you started CrossFit
In 2011.
In 2011. So right before you got pregnant
Right
with
before
Lucy.
I got pregnant with Lucy.
Okay.
And so you can imagine when you find something like this and you finally feel like, oh, I found my place. I feel like I fit in finally for the first time in my life. And then I got pregnant a year later and I was not ready to give that up. Like, I would have gone kicking and screaming had they told me you cannot do CrossFit anymore. So I did. I just kept doing it. And I'm sure you will remember there was not really any guidelines back then because it was still relatively new. There was a website that you could go to that gave you modifications by trimester.
Yeah, it was some like ladies blog or something.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. One of the other moms had told me about it.
Yep.
And so the night
official.
Exactly. And the night before the workout, I would look at what the program was for the next day. I'd go to the website and see what the modifications were. And that was how I managed to get through CrossFit with my first pregnancy. And while some of them were pretty obvious, like don't do burpees once your stomach is bigger and throw yourself on the ground.
Bad idea.
There was never really an explanation as to why you were doing these modifications. So it made it really easy to say, I don't really need to follow this because I feel okay.
Yeah. And it was that whole like, listen to your body. And that was like pretty much it.
Right. And so if you can still run and you prefer running to rowing, why would you choose rowing if it's just like, oh, maybe you shouldn't run once you get further along in your pregnancy? If you still like running and it feels okay, then why would you bother modifying that? So then fast forward a few years and 3 babies later, my body has done quite a few things, has changed quite a bit. And I learned through taking a few courses that I might have done more damage to myself than I realized just by continuing to exercise the way that I did. By no means do I want women to stop exercising while they are pregnant. While I was pregnant with my first 2, I was not working. So not only was it my exercise outlet, it was also the place where I had my connection, my social hour, my ability to talk to other women, other people in general. So
Other adults.
exactly. It was
Grown-up conversations.
Yes,
is
like
important.
I was devastated on the days where I could not make it to the gym because this was my time. So if you tell women that they can't work out while they're pregnant, they're not like, it's not only not good for their bodies, it's not good for their mental health. So there had to be some middle ground, you know, where can you mix together, you know, still being in your community with your people, exercising to stay healthy and fit for your life. And I mean, having a baby is not an easy task. And then having children to run around after, like you have got to be in some sort of shape to keep after them. So staying fit is very important. You just have to do it in the right way. So that's where I kind of came up with this course. It started purely as exercise. It was going to be how women should work out while they're pregnant, how to help them rehab after they have their babies. But then I realized there was so much stuff that went into that if you knew more, if you had more education about your body, about what was happening to you, it'd make it easier for you to make these changes. So when I started making programming for this business, I decided I wanted to add some things to it. So now we have an anatomy class. Like in the very beginning, when you sign up, we go through your anatomy, how it's changing when you have your baby, and why it makes so much sense to make these modifications in exercise. So if you know, okay, there's a fetus growing inside of me and it's putting a lot of stress on my abdominal wall, my pelvic floor, it makes it so much easier to say, oh, that modification makes a lot of sense. Maybe I don't want to stress an already stressed system. So while, yes, I can go for a run, or I can jump rope, or I can do box jumps, is it the best choice I can make at this moment in time for my pelvic floor? Like, do I want to deal with incontinence or prolapse for the rest of my life? Or if I make these small modifications now, bring my ego down, keep that in check, do I have the potential of maintaining health and maintaining your pelvic floor muscles a little bit better after the baby is born? Like, your long-term fitness goals should be kept in mind, but it's harder to make those decisions if you don't know the whys behind the modifications.
Yeah, I keep thinking, I can't remember the entire thing, but there's a quote, and it's, show me and I will learn, tell me and something else, but then it's involve me and I will understand.
Right.
And that is where you have bridged the gap, is involving people and making these women understand all of the whys, and really getting them in touch with what is going on with them. And I haven't been through pregnancy, but I imagine it feels very alien at times, because this body that you have been in, this body that you know inside and outside, is suddenly changing on a regular basis. Yes, and daily. It is far out of your control.
I know. And Sarah and I, she is my nutrition coach, but we talk a lot about how I wish there was classes for women as you grow, like right before you decide you want to have kids, like, let's take this class and learn about what happens to your body, and and then another
Set
one,
expectations,
right? And then another one when you're about to enter a menopause, that you understand what's about to happen to you again. Like, I feel like so much of our life, we're just you figure out one phase that you're in, and then you end up in another phase, and you have to figure that one out too. So that's kind of why I'm here. Like, I have tried to condense everything I wish I had known about pregnancy, about motherhood, through doctors and midwives and doulas and lactation consultants. I mean, I'm not an expert in any of these things, but all the things that I have learned and wished I had known before I had kids or at the beginning of having kids, that's what I have put into this course. So, we used to have a village that helped us raise our families, and you were around other women who were pregnant or having babies or raising children, and you were more involved in the process, and we're just not anymore. And so sometimes, I mean, for me at least, I was the first person that I kind of knew that was, I wasn't the first of my friends to have a baby or get pregnant, but they didn't intimately involve me in what was going on with them, you know? So as this stuff is happening to you, like, is this right? Is this normal? Is this how I'm supposed to be feeling? Is this what's supposed to be happening to my body? So I hope that the people that join me in this process, they have all of those fears alleviated, that they're like, oh, okay, yeah, she said this, I should expect this, and it's happening now. So like, oh, I don't even have to worry about it. Or, we talk about a lot of things that they might want to bring up with their healthcare provider. Like, I'm not the expert about it, but I want to give you the information so that you can look into it further yourself, or you can have that discussion with your doctor or midwife.
I think a lot of times when you're going through these life changes, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So
Right.
It's so great that you are acting as this resource for these women. And even thinking about my own experience, like, I am the youngest of 3 girls. I have 2 sisters that had babies before me. I'm very close with my mother. I took a different approach to pregnancy and birth than my sisters even did. And I think that everybody should be empowered to make their own decisions regarding that. But I didn't feel like I had that person that had the same even goals that I had through my pregnancy and through my birth to bounce ideas off of, or to share with me the things that I may not have been exposed to and didn't even know to ask if it existed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then part of this is also like, I follow a lot of, my Instagram is very curated to what I do. So it's a lot of pelvic floor PTs. It's a lot of prenatal nutritionists and doulas and midwives. And so I'm able to, or even yoga instructors that focus primarily on pregnant women and postpartum. So I'm able to give them a lot of resources to look into things. Hey, you might enjoy looking at this, or read this book, or try this podcast, or look at this documentary, because it might answer some questions or even bring up some questions that you might want to further look into yourself or with your healthcare provider.
I mean, I imagine, again, not having gone through this, that having you in these women's corners, it makes them feel very seen and heard. And because you are not pushing any one thing and just providing them with more information, I just feel like it feels like a much safer space to be in.
That is the hope. And I also felt like when I was pregnant, they kind of just let you go. You know, like you have appointments, is it like once a month? And then toward the end, it's every week. But for the most part, they just see you every once in a while. And they're like, all right, you know, see you in however long it is. And I always felt like, don't they need to see me? Like, I'm pregnant. Don't they care, you know? But they don't. I mean, you just progress along as you go. And if nothing's going wrong, you take that as a good sign. But I always felt like I wanted more. Like, I wanted somebody to be there for me. So with these women, I check in with them every Monday morning. I send them a Marco Polo and just talk about what they should expect from that week, like their week of pregnancy, what they might be going through that week. And then we meet at various times throughout their pregnancy to discuss all of these courses. We talk about mindset. We talk about weird symptoms that you might have that you didn't ever hear about. And things might be popping up and you're like, what is happening to me? We talk about labor. We talk about a vaginal delivery, a cesarean section. We talk about hemorrhaging. We talk about breastfeeding. So we just kind of meet and talk and discuss these things. And then also just so they have somebody to bounce ideas off of or vent to, like, oh man, my mother-in-law is really, being pushy during my pregnancy. Somebody that they can just speak their mind to and then feel like, yes, they are being seen. Somebody cares that they're pregnant and, I don't know, gives them somebody to touch base with every once in a while.
I think this is so cool, Jamie, because I mean, maybe this exists somewhere else, but I didn't realize that there were people out there that could support me in my pregnancy in this way. Like, there are a bunch of avenues you could have gone with this being your passion, right? Like, you could have become a doula. You could have become a lactation consultant or something to bring this passion of yours to be more of your life. But you're so passionate about fitness too, and you're able to support them in that way, but really so much more. And you're talking about it like this is a course, but just what you've just said, it's more of like, what do you call yourself? A coach? I
said a consultant.
A consultant.
Because you can also say like, hey, I'm thinking about putting this stuff on my registry. Do you actually need any of this stuff? So it's more just like anything you need, any way I can help support you emotionally through your pregnancy, but also, and back to the beginning, this all started as a fitness course.
Right.
So I do also program for people.
Right.
So it's kind of anything I can help with while you're pregnant.
Okay, so you mentioned anatomy, you mentioned mindset, you mentioned just support in like, hey, I'm going to send you a video of like what to expect.
Yeah.
You're answering questions. This is done through like a self-paced course that they can take, or it's just like, hey, we're meeting and we're talking about these things. Like, talk about the logistics of how you provide what you offer.
So everything is a Google Meet, so it's all virtual, which thanks to COVID, that ended up working out pretty well. Right.
But also you can cast such a wider net and help so much more people because it's virtual.
Yes. And it's a little bit more convenient. Like, some of the women, like, they wake up, they're still in their pajamas. They, just have to open up a computer screen instead of, driving somewhere and meeting in person. So it's very convenient.
You mean at like month 9, you don't want to wake up at 7 a.m., put on a face full of makeup and go meet with your consultant?
Exactly. So I think
Y'all,
it makes
I couldn't get out of my car at 40 weeks pregnant. I remember telling that story. Like, I parked in my parking garage at work, and I was in the lines, and the car next to me was in the lines, and I physically could not get out of my car. I was like, I think this is a sign that I can go home for the day.
Yes.
So you don't have to drive anywhere, which is fantastic,
That
just
is
from a
key.
logistical standpoint.
So there's some that I want to cover during the first trimester, like the anatomy piece, the breathing, and the mindset, because I think the sooner you get all of that information in, the more you are able to carry it throughout your pregnancy. If you learn about how your breath should be and your pressure management, you're able to take that into all of your workouts from there on out. If we talk about mindset, then you're able to think about, hey, what is it going to be like to be a mom? Or, you can make all of these adjustments that we talk about in the mindset piece throughout the rest of your pregnancy, and then start planning for having a child there. And then second trimester is kind of this sweet spot where most people feel the best. We don't have as many meetings then, but that's when you really hone in on putting into use the things that you've learned about your anatomy, about the breathing. And this is where all of the exercise modifications usually start to kick in, because your stomach's getting bigger, you're starting to show. So this is more like, okay, we're really focusing on modifications here. Third trimester, that's when we start talking about labor, vaginal deliveries, C-sections, breastfeeding, hemorrhaging, all the things that are about to happen. Hopefully not hemorrhaging.
Yep.
Yes. But
Yes, hemorrhaging's not fun.
no, but it is a conversation that you can then go to your doctor or midwife with and say, like, how are we going to handle this if it does happen? What do I need to look out for if it happens after I go home, sort of thing. So I usually prompt them. I'll send them an email, say, hey, this is what I want to discuss next. Schedule it whenever it's best for you. And then we use Acuity so they can see, what I have available that matches with their schedule. And then, so I just kind of send them the email to schedule when it's good for them, like in their trimester. And then as far as programming goes, there are some women who prefer to work out at home, and they'll send me a list of what exercise equipment they have available. And then some are working out here. So if you're working out at home, I will send you on Sunday night, I do all the programming for the week. I'll send you 3 workouts for that specific week of your pregnancy. If it's movements I'm not sure you know how to do, I'll send a video that I have recorded of myself doing the movement that gives you kind of the tips and things that I want you to focus on. And so you'll get 3 workouts a week if you're doing them at home. And then if you're working out here, just tell me how many days a week you're planning on being here, and I will send you at 5 o'clock the night before, I'll send you the workout modifications for the next day. So it's I try to keep it as in line with what is programmed as possible. Like one of the days this week, there's Superman. So obviously we're not laying on the floor doing a Superman. So, we'll modify that as needed. But I always try and keep it the same muscle groups or same stimulus as what's happening in the rest of the class. So that they're still able to come. They're still able to work out with their friends. They're still able to get a similar workout in. But it's something that's much more appropriate for where they are in their pregnancy.
What do you think are common things that pregnant women, especially if they're pregnant for the first time, they may not realize should be modified for safety reasons?
For safety reasons, it's mostly things that could hit your stomach. So barbell work should definitely be modified by the second trimester when your stomach is starting to show.
So things like cleans, you should be modifying to, instead of barbells, using dumbbells.
Yes.
Yep.
For a couple of reasons too, because if you have a good bar path for your cleans or your snatches,
it should be close to your body.
It should be close to your body. So you would hit your stomach. If you start modifying to go around your stomach, then you are creating bad bar paths, bad
movement patterns.
Exactly. That you then have to break after the pregnancy is over, and you have to retrain your body how to do these Olympic lifts.
Not only that, but like the risk of injury, I think, not even your stomach, but the strain it's putting on your
shoulders and low back to get that bar out and away from your body just can cause so many issues.
Yep.
So that's a big one. They say inversions aren't great. Mostly for me, they didn't bother me. It was more like your blood volume is so high when you're pregnant that the minute I turned upside down, I felt like my head was going to pop off of my body. So it was more just uncomfortable. than
I
it
read
was.
some statistic when I was pregnant that like your blood volume increases by like 30%.
I think it's more.
More than that.
I think it's 50.
Crazy.
Where does it go?
Well, you bleed so much afterwards. It's got to, it's all coming out. But inversions are actually great for changing positioning of the baby.
Yeah. So if you have a baby that is
transverse or breech,
yeah.
So I did that with Bex. She was transverse at 35 weeks, and we were having to kind of brainstorm ways we were going to try and get her to go head down. And I followed this Spinning Babies website.
Yep.
I did inversions for a whole day. Every hour, I set a timer off. I would do. I just had my knees up on the couch and my elbows down on the ground and held that position for 5 breaths and then went about my day. But I did that 8 times that day, and she flipped. So, that's a great resource, the Spinning Babies website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so inversions, things like cleans, barbells close to the body.
Yeah, and then running and jumping, it can be done. There are women who have run like the Boston Marathon and then immediately gone to give birth. But then you put a huge risk of damaging your pelvic floor muscles. And there are many women who have prolapse or incontinence who have never carried or birthed a baby because those muscles just get weak over time. And as you go through menopause, the lack of estrogen in your body will also affect the strength of those muscles. But when you have a large thing in your abdominal cavity and then you are jostling it around and putting impact on all of those muscles, like you are really taxing those muscles to stay where they belong. So knowing the potential risk for prolapse or incontinence and understanding that part, it makes it a lot easier to not run or jump. Because then you're like, ooh, I don't really want to have to deal with that because it sounds awful.
Yes.
So it makes it easier to do like step ups or row or bike. And
if you understand the why behind that recommendation, then you can make that decision for yourself. I had no idea.
Me either.
When I was pregnant with Brennan. I have shared this before, and I am not I'm no stranger to sharing TMI things, but I wrote a blog post after Brennan was born about my experience with pelvic floor therapy because after he was born, I was trying to relearn how to do double unders, and I literally at one point left the gym because I peed on myself. Yeah. Like it was bad. And it's not something that was ever said to me, like this is how to take steps to try to prevent this from happening. But it's also something that I think a lot of women just think comes with the territory of being a mother. Oh, my baby was over 9 pounds and I pushed for 4 hours. And, so now I have incontinence and that's just something that I should expect and deal with for the rest of my life. And they don't even know that you can get pelvic floor therapy. Y'all, I went to 6 physical therapy sessions and it was fixed.
Yes.
It's not something that people have to live with. And I think that you telling people like, this is what could happen if you do this. So maybe consider doing something else and even preventing it from happening. But also if you are in that position, having you as a resource to explain to women, like this is not something that you have to deal with. It's absolutely something that you can take steps to correct.
Yes. And pelvic floor physical therapy is something I tell all of the women about from the very beginning. I suggest they do it before they have their baby, and I suggest they do it after they have their baby. I did not know it existed until after I'd had Lucy. I went to this women's fitness summit, and they had a pelvic floor PT there, and I was like, oh my goodness, please tell me more, because I was also dealing with incontinence at the time. And she told me all about it, and that there was this whole network you could go to find the one closest to you. So I went to see one in Houston where I was living at the time, and she told me about relaxing my pelvic floor, and I was like, what? There is, I didn't even, no wonder I couldn't push my baby out at first because I was pushing against a clenched pelvic floor. So all of these light bulbs went off, and I was like, oh my God, now I know how to relax my pelvic floor. My second birth was so much easier because I knew how to relax. So that is the biggest piece of advice I can give. Most of my any pregnant woman I see, I say, go see a pelvic floor PT. They will teach you how to relax your pelvic floor, and you can practice pushing. And it gives you at least a little bit of confidence going into that day that you can control nothing of. Every labor and delivery is so random and uncontrollable. But at least if you go in with the knowledge of like, okay, I know how to relax my pelvic floor and I know how I've practiced how to push, at least you have a little bit of confidence, behind you. But that is 100% the best piece of advice I can give women.
Yeah, I love that. You're helping these women identify in a really crazy time where so much is out of their control, the things that are in their control, and giving them something positive to focus on.
Yes. And then the same thing for postpartum. Go see your pelvic floor PT. They can assess you, see, how things are looking. And if you do have incontinence or if you do have prolapse, it is not the end of the world. There are so many ways to modify exercise postpartum to incorporate any of these feelings that you're having, any of the symptoms that you're experiencing. And then there's also things like pessaries that they can get for you to help hold up your organs. If you feel like they're all falling out when you're lifting really heavy. There's just so many. Like,
I feel like we're making having a baby really scary. Like all these things could happen to you, and like these things have happened to me. I've gone to see a pelvic floor therapist. I have diastasis in my abdomen. I have a herniated belly button that I'm not ever gonna fix. But it's a good thing they're cute, right?
Yeah. And that's what I try to tell them. Like, I don't want to give you all this information to scare you.
Exactly.
It's more to prepare you so that if it does happen, you're not like, why didn't anybody tell me about this? Because there were so many things that I felt like, why didn't anybody tell me to expect this or that this was a possibility? Yep. And it's not to scare women. And I tell them that after every time we meet. It's like, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to give you enough information so that you can dig into it more if you want. Or if this happens to you, you are not surprised by it and just taken aback, because I want you to understand what's happening to your body, but that if these things do happen, it's not the end of the world. Like, there are plenty of women who are still very athletic, who are dealing with all of these things, and there are ways to make them get better. There are ways to work around them, and we have all these resources that I will help you find to deal with this. Like, this isn't the end of your life as you know it.
I think for someone that has not started down this path, but it is in the future, something that has been really comforting for me is knowing that not only are you here as a resource, but having watched you go through this yourself, right. And to have been friends with you through a pregnancy and see where you are now and watch you work out and know that, like, the days may feel long, but there are answers, there are tools, there is support. It gets better.
Yeah. And I mean, 9 months of pregnancy feels like a very long time. But if you look at your life, I mean, we all hope to live to, like, I hope 100, that seems to be the trend these days. 9 months is
a blip.
Exactly. So modifying stuff for 9 months, and then postpartum as well, like giving yourself a couple of years to recover from this pretty intense major physical trauma. I mean, come on, you can do it.
I love that you're supporting women's mindset and all of this too. That was a really hard thing for me. I did CrossFit before I was pregnant with Brennan, and you don't know like what your body's going to do after pregnancy, and when I came back, I had a pretty easy birth with him. And when I came back to working out, I had a really hard time putting my ego aside and putting one step in front of the other, because I wasn't necessarily comparing myself to the other people in the gym. I was comparing myself to my old self. And even things like jumping on a 12-inch box, when I came back, I was like, oh, I don't think I can do that. And I didn't. And I modified down. And it's like being on the other side. If I was coaching myself, I would have absolutely encouraged the modification. But when you're in that space, that's a really hard thing to overcome and to keep coming and understand that it will get better. But you got to keep showing up, and you got to, that's tough.
I mean, it's taken me over a year. I mean, I went very slow with my return to all of this after this third pregnancy. I think because life was just so stressful with COVID and adjusting to 3 kids that I couldn't take. I mean, exercise is a stress. It's a good stress, but it's a stress. And I could not take another intense stress in my life at that point. But January, my goal was to kind of get back into it. And I have, but it's been a very slow road. But I think because I'm older now and because this is my 3rd kid, I also know like it doesn't matter how long it takes. My goal is a lifetime of fitness. You know, my goal is to be one of the 70-year-olds in the classes that I coach because I want to be able to be active with my grandkids or my kids if I don't have grandkids, or, you know, I want to be able to enjoy life up to a very old age. And what I'm doing today doesn't matter so much as what I'm doing tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So as long as I'm, you know, being smart about it, and which leads great into like the postpartum recovery part. I had no idea what I was doing postpartum. After I had Lucy, it was such an awful birth. I mean, it was great. It was exactly what I had wanted, but I pushed for far too long. I tore. I had it was just very traumatic experience that took me many years to get over. But I was so desperate to get back to the old me, and I was not. Nobody had talked to me about mindset, and I was not prepared to be a mom. I thought I would
just naturally.
Yes, you know that's
happen.
what you hear. Like, oh, you're gonna naturally know what to do, and I'm like, yes, I knew how to take care of her, but mentally, it took me years. I mean, I have a minivan now, so obviously I've adapted to being a mom.
Things have escalated
very quickly. But it took me years to be okay with, you know, losing my identity of who I was as a woman and all the things that I defined myself as. So postpartum, I was like, okay, I've got to get back to the gym.
As fast
as possible. So I can remember like my eyes were still bloodshot from pushing, and I had torn, I had broken my tailbone, like all this stuff. And here I am jogging down my street to warm up for a CrossFit style workout in my garage, peeing all over myself as I'm jogging down the street.
Jamie.
And like nobody is saying, is this really a good idea?
Yeah.
Because nobody knew any better. Like nobody knew to tell me like, hey, stop.
And
This
you
is
didn't
too
have
much.
a network of moms to say like, this is not this
No,
is not
because
okay,
they were
this
all
isn't
doing the
normal.
same thing. You
Yeah.
know, like nobody knew better.
I think it's so important though that it comes from a trusted and educated source though, because I can imagine you being in that place and just somebody random being like, what are you doing? You're going to hurt yourself. And that being received very poorly on your end.
Like, oh yeah?
Oh, yeah?
Watch what I'm
Watch
gonna...
me.
Exactly. That's exactly what would have happened.
So I think it's important that it's coming from like a trusted source, like somebody that you're asking to help you through this time. And what a great thing that you can be that for so many women now.
So with Annie, my second, I knew better by that point. So as early as a week postpartum, I started doing these rehab exercises. I mean, it's very gentle stuff. It's breathing, reconnecting to your core, some stretching, but it gave me the feeling as though, okay, I'm working towards fitness again. I'm starting to work out. I'm making my way towards getting back to the gym. So even though it's very gentle and very time appropriate for the phase of postpartum I was in, it made me feel like I was doing something, you know, so something is better than nothing. It wasn't CrossFit, thank goodness. But it got me closer to that. And so I did this program for 8 weeks and then slowly modified my way back to the gym. I did the same thing with Bex, and, you know, it took an even longer time to get back to the gym, but I knew now, okay, what I did the first time was not good. Whatever damage I had done to myself while I was pregnant and pushing during labor, I probably just went ahead and exacerbated that through how I decided to come back postpartum. And I knew that it did not set me up very well for the future. Like it probably pushed me back, if anything, because then I had to go back and go to physical therapy and, you know, just kind of take steps back because I was unable to fully be the person that I so desperately wanted to be, that I used to be before I had children. So you learn through trial and error that sometimes slow is the fastest way, and taking your time to get back. I mean, think about how much PT you go through after a knee surgery or a shoulder surgery and how modified your workouts are from all of that. Like if you grow a baby and all of your organs are displaced and then you push it out of your vagina or you have your abdominal wall cut open, I mean, all of these are very traumatic to your body. And to think that we just throw women back at 6 weeks and say, okay, good to go. You're like,
And I mean, also the difference between like a knee surgery, you don't have these crazy hormonal changes after.
and you're maybe still sleeping. You're not sleep. I mean, if you're not sleeping and you're trying to breastfeed and your hormones are all over the place, yeah, getting back to the gym should be the last thing on your plate. But a lot of us need something for our brains, if not even for our bodies, to be doing. And so that's where the postpartum program comes in. It's like, okay, this is what I want you to do for the first week. And if it takes you longer than a week, that's totally fine. Like, here's the link to schedule for the next session. It could be a week from now. It could be 3 weeks from now. But when you feel like you've gotten these exercises down and they are really easy, let's make our next appointment. And then we just do that until the 6 weeks or 6 sessions is up. And then I say, all right, I think you are ready to jump back into whatever fitness you were doing before.
Maybe not jump. I'm just kidding.
Yes, maybe not jump, but at a modified level. So a lot of your workouts,
Maybe a jaunt,
Maybe
a mosey into.
not jump. But a lot of the workouts postpartum will be similarly modified as when you were pregnant, and then you will slowly work your way back up to, a year later, here I am, finally doing workouts, But it is a very slow process back. But again, like, what is a year, 9 months in a lifetime, So if your goal is a lifetime of fitness, then it makes it a lot easier to take things slow and do it the right way.
The other thing that I want to say is that it takes so much courage to ask for help. I think that women in our culture are so often of the mindset, like, I'll just do it myself. Like, oh, who needs pelvic floor therapy? I'll just do Kegels myself. And who needs whatever? I'll just do it myself. I'll do the research and I'll figure it out myself. And I think that especially during this time in women's lives, it's so important to not only have the information, but also have the support. And asking for help is one of the best things that you can do for your mental health and your physical health long term, even after baby's born and beyond. So
yeah, and I do have a network of people that I freely give their names to. I see a therapist for postpartum depression and anxiety, and I'm happy to give her name out to anyone. And I talk about it freely because I don't want women to think it's a taboo subject. Like, I want them to know, like, this is really tough. Being a mom is tough. Being a parent is tough. All of these transitions that happen in your life. I mean, your work changes, your relationship to your partner changes. Everything changes when you have a baby. So if you struggle with any of that on a small scale or a large scale, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's quite normal. And so I try to normalize all of the feelings that people are going through. I tell them that it took me years to be okay with being a mom, because I don't want them to think that you have to immediately have a baby and be like, oh, this is fabulous.
I got it.
Yeah, so I just try to make people feel not alone. I don't know.
Well, I think too, that's where a lot of women get, like, I love my children. I loved the baby stage too. Like, I'm one of those people that just like it was hard with my own, but I love that stage too. But you see all this stuff on Instagram and you hear all of these people's experiences. And if your experience isn't that blissful, like, yes, that you feel like you should be having, I think that it's important to just know that your experience is your experience, and that if you're struggling, that's okay too, and that you can ask for help. And
and that's a little bit part of the mindset piece too, is like, all this is going to change, whether you know it or not, whether you want to believe it or not. Like, be prepared. Like, have the talks with your husband or your partner now. Like, hey, how are we going to split up the division of labor in the house? Like, right now I do all of the grocery shopping and cooking, but that might not be able to happen in the future. So, like, let's talk about that now, how we might split some of this work up. Or, you're used to me being really efficient and helpful around here. I'm not going to be able to later, So just be ready for me to not be the same person that I was, or to the level of efficiency that I used to be, you know, so just having those conversations beforehand, I think can help a lot too.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if women out there are listening and they want your help or they want more information, where should they go?
My website is jamietaylorwellness.com. In the top right, you can find a schedule button, and you can schedule a free initial consultation either for the prenatal portion or the postpartum portion. There's also a link to my email address on there. So if you have any questions, you can just email me.
I'm just mad because I didn't know about you when I was pregnant.
Well, that's why you create things, right?
Yes,
You become the person that you needed when you were pregnant.
I think that's so awesome that you have created what you wish you had to support other women through this.
Yep. And hopefully it will make a difference in their lives.
Yeah. Well, I already know that it is because one of my nutrition clients is also working with you. And she has great things to say.
Yay.
So thanks for being on the show, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And good luck to you in this journey.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.